F1 preseason testing has come and gone, and here are the key takeaways that each team is taking into next week's first race back in Bahrain. Before we get started, just want to remind you, subscribe, like, and follow at the Pitwall Pod. It really helps us out. It means a lot. And without further ado, let's get into our first team in no particular order, but we're doing Red Bull first. Red Bull came to the track, and particularly when they revealed their car especially, with a very surprising design. Everybody just assumed they were going to kind of keep digging in the same direction, but here comes Adrian Newey with a brand new design. And he said that he knew that everybody was just going to copy what they did last year, and he knew that they would be vulnerable. But here he comes with a whole new direction and possible no side pods on the way, multiple air inlets, and I mean, they just look as stable as ever. Max said he has no issues with this car. Everything about it makes him happy. And that leads me to believe that maybe Checo might struggle with it a little more if it's tailored towards Max. Obviously, this is a big year for Checo, out of contract for next year. Helmut Marko claims their advantage is about 0.3. Other teams are saying it's probably over a second, which is just insane. Overall, Red Bull's approach to this season is never let them know your next move, and we certainly did not see this coming. Next up, let's talk about Mercedes. Now, I just want to preface everything else that I talk about by saying times don't matter in testing, and all of this doesn't really have to do with how people compared, mostly what's going on in their own team. So Mercedes first. Mercedes seems like they're sandbagging potentially. They ran aggressively low a lot of the test, which is kind of their main focus, is improving the rear end of their car. But they ran high fuel for most of the time, it looked like. And for the first time in 2 years, no matter how low they ran the car, there was no porpoising, which is just the main thing they needed to fix. It is overall a much more stable car, and they are thought to have some of the best correlation between their sim and what is on track, which should hopefully lead to improvements and closing up the gap over the season, depending on how big the gap is, of course. Mercedes also had an extremely draggy car the last couple years, and this is something that Lewis Hamilton complained about especially. They were able to make an overtake for what it's worth during testing without DRS. Overall, it is seeming like they have a much more stable car. And we all know Lewis Hamilton. If you can just give him a stable car, maybe he can pull something out of the bag. So we'll see. Ferrari looked very strong throughout preseason testing. They're keeping rather quiet about their expectations. Most of these teams are. Ferrari overall had better tire degradation, and they actually think their long stint pace might be stronger than their qualifying pace this year. And their focus over the next week is actually going to be preparing for qualifying to try and get that one lap pace under control. Ferrari on paper looks like they might be the closest to Red Bull going in. Again, testing times don't matter. McLaren seems to be starting on a better foot than last year and kind of building off where they left off of at the end of last year, but they are still having tire wear problems, it seems. There's a few rumors around the paddock saying that they're cooking their tires worse than anybody was last year. That's what they're saying, so McLaren might get ahead by 5 seconds at the beginning of the race and then 4 laps later be in 10th for what they're making it sound like. So Aston Martin had overall good race pace. They were very strong in the medium to slow speed corners, as they kind of were at different times last year. But overall, they're looking strong, much better than where they were kind of mid-late season last year. Are they going to be a top 4 contender? It's too early to tell. Controversial team, VCarb, RB. No, the jury's still out on what we're calling them. Seems like the commentators are calling them RB. Anyway, their main thing that's going on, obviously, is the whole complaining about how Red Bull is having an advantage because they can have 2 teams and all this stuff. They don't seem to be coming right out the gate as 1, 2, 3, 4 all Red Bull. And the main reason for this actually is because of their reorganization that's still in process. They've been saying that they've been moving around a lot of their engineers, sending them to Milton Keynes in England while leaving others in Italy. So there's still some organizational things that are going along, and I think they're going to improve throughout the season. But right now, probably more like top midfield, somewhere around there, which is still a massive improvement from last year. Stake F1 team, this one, they were pretty quiet. They had a few times that popped up at the top, but I think they're also kind of focusing on their rebrand, and there's a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes with them, with the stake sponsorship stuff. So overall, they're seeming like they're going to be in kind of a similar place to last year, around 8th or so. Not a lot to gather from them right now. They're keeping extremely quiet. There's not a whole lot of interviews about them, but also they're a less popular team, so maybe people are just covering them less. Williams was a big story, especially the first 2 days of testing, as they had 2 different times that they had to stop on track. James Vowles has stated that what they're trying to do is to become a more universal overall team. Last year, they were the straight line demons, but I think they might have to take a step back to take 2 steps forward kind of thing. That's going to be rough, especially for people like Alex Albon, who is, he has this contract through 2025, we're hearing, but there's some bigger seats opening up this year. And Logan Sargent, who's coming off of his rookie year and trying to prove himself and show that he deserves a seat. I'm not saying things are dire at Williams, but just expect some changes. Also, another potential problem is that they didn't even have their shakedown until the day before F1 testing started, while all the other teams got on track before that. So that's a bit concerning as well. I think overall, they're just trying to develop to the very last minute and kind of change their car, like I said, to be more universal. They're another team that look for them to improve massively as the season goes on, I think. All right, let's talk about Haas. Haas actually maybe surprised me a little bit in F1 testing, just because I think we were all just assuming that they were going to be the slowest, that an F2 car could beat them. But actually, they might not be the slowest team, and that's not necessarily about what they're doing well, but what other teams aren't doing as well. So we'll talk about that in a second. But overall, they were focused on understanding the tires, which is just an interesting thing to say, but they were trying to understand the tires. We'll see what happens with them. I anticipate maybe they'll start a little faster and then drop back as the season goes. Haas can never seem to make any upgrades as the season goes on. So like I said, I don't think they're nearly the back marker as another team, and that team is Alpine. Alpine is an absolute dumpster fire right now compared to how big of a brand that they're trying to be. They just have disappointed time and time again already this preseason with their whole paint thing. The point is that they're slow. They have no mechanical grip. Their aerodynamics are bad, and they already knew that their engine was unreliable and the problem for the last couple of years. So it really begs the question, what is good in this team other than the 2 drivers? I mean, we know that Ocon and Gasly can drive, but they're looking like they're going to come out the gate the 10th team. And the fact that the team is saying that they, quote, do not excel in any area, the team is saying this, the team is saying that their car does not excel in any area, that's a problem. That's a big problem. It's just hard to understand what's going on with them. I don't think any team really understands what Alpine's doing right now. And boy, do I hope they have some improvements in the pipeline other than just slowly adding paint back to the car. Those are most of the takeaways. There's plenty of other things that you can read into in the Times, and who looks more bumpy on the straights and tighter in the corners, who has better wind tunnel correlation, who's sandbagging. There's so many things that we're questioning. I think there is a team that is sleeping out there and is much closer to Red Bull than they're saying. And it's going to come down to, can they develop faster than Red Bull and maybe catch them by next season? But yeah, that's been it. We finally made it. It's race week, so enjoy the race, and I'll see you on the next one.